What is up, Kings fans? Welcome to another edition of Hockey Royalty Live. I'm your guy, Russell Morgan. You will notice that our main host, Brandon McMahon, our main guy, he's not with us today. He's enjoying, I believe, Christmas festivities, party or something. So I hope he's having a good time. So you're stuck with me as your host. I'll try to do my best here because Brandon's the man and does a great job. But with me today is my other colleague, I guess, with Hockey Royalty, Mr. Joe Paterino. Joe, what's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
I'm all right. And we say this every time, so people have heard it before. Every time. It's like we find our way to stumble through these when we're without Randon, but we will try to
It's like Ricky Bobby when he has this, like, I don't know what to do with my hands, like, scene.
Like, I'm just, like, we have no idea what we're doing. We're clicking random stuff. We've already, full disclosure, I just couldn't find, I don't know where, like, the intro is. So we're bumbling our way through this, Russ, but we will get there. And one way that you can get there, Russ, if it comes to like a game or an event, is by using one of our sponsors at Game Time.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. GameTime.co. I got to tell you, I was fired up earlier this season because, I'm a Kings fan out here on the East Coast, so I don't get the opportunity to see a ton of. I certainly don't see them at home. I've never seen them in LA, so I try to get a chance to get out and see them in Buffalo if I can. I've been to Philly, not this year, but I've been to Philly. I've been to Ottawa. I've seen them in some random spots, Boston, and it's a lot of fun. So, like, whenever you get the opportunity to see, your favorite team live, it's awesome. And Game Time has a new feature that's called Game Time Picks, and that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams even easier. It filters out the fluff, shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you just don't have to waste your time going through all these tickets. And it's important to note too, like, it's not even just sports, like, right? Game Time has concerts, it's got all sorts of different events, so it's outstanding in that sense too. And like, so all the talk here locally, Russ, it's funny, you and I were just talking briefly about it, is like how bad the Buffalo Sabres are right now. So out of curiosity, I was like looking around to see, because these ticket prices are going to be brutal as they continue to go on this losing streak. So I looked, and they're getting obliterated, or they lost today, I should say, to Toronto in Buffalo, which is always a heavy Toronto crowd anyways. So I was looking, and they play at home again next Friday against Chicago. And I was looking at Game Time, and there's a 100 level seats for less than $70, which in Buffalo is not the norm. Like, that's a really good deal. And in fact, it was a super value deal in the top 1%. So that right there shows you how good of a deal that is. And that's probably one of my favorite features in the Game Time app is the way it breaks down the different values for you, depending on the seat that you're getting or the ticket that you're getting. It's really it's crazy how low the Buffalo Sabres ticket prices are falling. But if you're going to look for them, or any of your favorite sports teams, certainly look on the Game Time app. You can customize your spot with, again, the Game Time Picks, making your team gets your favorite events, your favorite comedian. I just saw Russ, by the way. I don't know if you're a big Nate Bargatze fan, but he's coming to Rochester in next October. And I already talked to my wife and said, we have to go to the show. I love Nate Bargatze. So we're going to check out the Game Time app for those. It's got all-in pricing, seat views. You can get a panoramic view from your seat before you even buy it. Lowest price guarantee. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And Russ, what time is it? I don't know, but the Kings are hot as hell right now. That's all I know.
That is very true. Yeah, man, they're very hot. Want to get to some of these people in the chat here. Our boy Colin Tully, he was in here last night.
boy,
And then he
Colin.
joined again today. He went to the game last night in Philly. I'll read his comment from yesterday. Went tonight in Philly. Was nervous for game. Not even close. Let's go, boys. Go Kings, go. Love the podcast. Thanks, Colin. And then he followed up with a excellent $9.99 super chat. Always appreciative. Thanks, Colin. Got to go to bed, guys, for work. Love ya. Was in Philly last night. Beautiful game. Love you guys. There's so much love. I love it. It's Christmas time, the holidays.
My boy, Colin.
He said love 3 different times. So he loves the podcast. He loves us. And he must love the Kings. So that a boy, Colin. Also got Al Smith. Yay, finally made another one of these live. Al Smith says, let's go. Robert Barton says, hello, everyone. Hello, Robert. We got Oliver Figlin in here. Oliver, our buddy Clark at Clark for Norris on Twitter. What's up, Ollie? How you doing, bud? Yeah, and then Robert says, Joe's segues are the greatest.
Appreciate that.
And Tofu Tomo says, Joe, does Game Time have Sabres tickets for $3?
They're getting close.
They probably do. They probably do. It's getting to that point. Yeah. So, guys, like we just mentioned, the Kings are rolling. This 7-game road trip has been pretty good to the boys so far. They're 3-1-1 so with 2 games left. We'll have the back-to-back over the weekend against Nashville and then Washington. So looking forward to those 2. But last night, it just seemed like another game where it's gotten to the point now where you're almost expecting the Kings to win these type of games, and you go up against teams like Philadelphia or whoever that maybe aren't, I guess, on the upper echelons of the NHL in terms of competitive teams. And yeah, I mean, I just kind of looked at the schedule. I looked at who Philly played, and they played the night before against Detroit. And I was watching some of that game, and it was like a hard-fought game. They're going back and forth. I think at the end of final score was like 6-4. So I was like, the Kings are going to roll this team. It just felt inevitable. You're watching the game, and like there were just so many. It felt like un-Kings-like mistakes that were kind of happening. They didn't really play to their identity, at least through the first 2 periods, and there were just like lapses in the defensive zone. I mean, we saw I think the Flyers' first goal with Noah, I believe it was Noah Cates, just was left wide open. I think it was Kevin Fiala just kind of didn't take his man on the back check, and they just let Cates in the middle. One of the other goals, Joel Edmondson decided to go behind his own goal line and was beat right to the middle for a slot pass. And yeah, like those goals are bound to go in. And it felt like, I don't know about if you felt the same way, Joe, but like Joe, I was watching, like when you're watching the game, like it felt like after the second period, I believe it was tied 3-3. Mm-hmm. It's just like, okay, the Kings just need to get locked back in, get back into their identity, get back to what they do best, and they should easily take this game. That's kind of what they did. They just kind of looked inward a little bit. We're like, hey, we're not really playing our type of game. Let's just focus a little bit. And they ended up coming out with a 7-3 win, holding the Philadelphia Flyers to only, I believe, 2 shots on goal in the third period. What did you think about the game?
You know, and this may sound a little strange because it's a little not like the Kings' identity to have such a high-scoring affair, clearly. I actually think this is I was actually really impressed with this win because you kind of just pointed out the first couple periods, there was some maybe uncharacteristic mistakes. There was, it was in the Kings didn't have the identity that we've seen them have. They weren't dictating the play necessarily, like we've seen them do. Like look at that Ranger game, they completely dominated that game, and so I think the reason why I say this is an impressive win is maybe for whatever reason they didn't quite have it or things weren't clicking the way they normally are through the first 2 periods. They get a big goal from Kopitar to tie the game late in that second period. So they get in, they're trailing at some point in the game. They get a big goal from the captain to get it into the third as a tied. And to have that type of statement in the third period, you get the great tip in, an excellent tip by Fogle, the ridiculous pass by Turcotte, an even better pass by Laferriere, the play he made to Fiala, and the way they just rolled in that third period, kind of to your point, like just say, okay, let's just settle in here and take care of business. And to me, that's really impressive, where you may not have it early on, you do enough to stay in the game. and then you really you finish the job and you finish it impressively. And I think that's a really, really good win, a good road win, against a scrappy team, a team that's trying to make a name for themselves. So it wasn't your prototypical strangle the team to death and just dominate 5-on-5 necessarily. There were mistakes there, but sometimes those wins are a little bit more impressive.
Yeah, kind of. Exactly. Like it seems like what's giving Kings fans, or at least myself, a lot of confidence in watching this team during this stretch. I think I shared since November 14th, they have the highest point percentage among all NHL teams. So they're on some hell of a heater right now. But I think what's most impressive about some of these wins is that they're finding ways to win. It's not just like relying on these 2-1, 1-0 slugfest that where it's just like it's just going to be just a chore just to get through watching the game. They're getting punched back. They're making some mistakes, but they're capitalizing on their scoring chances and then remedying a lot of the mistakes that they're making throughout the games too to pull out the victories. I mean, I just think back to that. I think it was the Stars game earlier on over this last stretch or whatever, where they came back and won that gutsy win at home. And that was really the first time you kind of realized, like, okay, that was like, I mean, at least watching the game and you felt the emotion from the building and you felt the emotion from the team too. That was really like the first time they really shown that all season. And now we're starting to see that more and more. I feel like I think that happened again, at least in the game in Anaheim, where Eric Portillo kind of had to pull them to a victory, and they kind of fought through some adversity there when Anaheim even gave them a little bit of pushback. So yeah, we saw that again last night with Philadelphia. I mean, it's 3-3 game at the end of the second period. Who knows what could happen? I mean, the Kings were 2-1-1 on the road trip so far. So yeah, you lose that game, you go to 2-2-1. Who knows? I mean, but you get that win, you get the 2 points. Now you're sitting pretty at 3-1-1 on the 5 games so far with 2 games left on the road trip. I mean, even if they do go 0-2, they lose these next 2. I mean, it's still pretty manageable 7-game roadie for one of the longest road trip or the longest road trip of the season. So you have to be happy about that. But yeah, you mentioned it. Some of the players. I mean, Alex Turcotte, he's just been a gem on the top line. So I mean, really everywhere he's been playing. And so it's nice to see Hiller kind of elevating his play a little bit. He's been giving him minutes a little bit more. But it was really everybody, I felt like. I mean, Turcotte had that really nice backhand saucer pass. Alex Ferrier, it's funny because he's been trying that pass. It feels like going back to last year, like at least once a game. Like he tries that. So I'm curious I can't wait to ask him about that, how he finally feels to get that actually go in for a goal. Because I know Fiala was kind of sitting there waiting for that pass. But yeah, it was just kind of feel like everybody contributing, even Deneau's spring pass to spring Kevin Fiala for that first goal breakaway, which was nice. And then Warren Fogle with that great deflection. I mean, it just felt like everybody was contributing. Even Darcy Kemper had, I thought, a pretty solid game for giving up 3 goals, but really a couple of them were really not his fault at all. So you can't really blame him. But yeah, it's just another real impressive road win for this Kings team that now is starting to make a name for themselves, not just in Los Angeles, but it seems like across national media, a lot of people are starting to pay attention to what the Kings are doing and what Jim Hiller has been able to do. I saw, where's this?
I was about to post it. I was just about to post this up there, Russ, and ask your opinion on it. So go ahead.
Yeah, Oliver asked, do you all think Hiller should get consideration for the Jack Adams? And I don't know what else he needs to do to prove he should be getting consideration for Jack Adams. I think a lot of people are paying attention to what Spencer Carberry's been doing in Washington, and he seems to be maybe the favorite right now. But, I mean, if you're not having Jim Hiller up there right at the top, I mean, I know he's taking over a team that's gone to the playoffs over 3 straight years. So there's a good base to take over. But when you come into a season, first-year head coach, new system, a lot of roster turnover, and then you're without your number 1 defenseman, your number 1 minutes eater throughout the first half of the season, and you're pitching a top 3, top 2 in the Western Conference or Pacific Division at least so far in the standings. I mean, yeah, you'd have to put Jim Hiller up there, and I'm very impressed, and I'm very pleased with a lot of the moves that he's been doing. It seems like he's been pushing a lot of the right buttons. I mean, you kind of just look back and forth. I mean, he's willing to try things out. I mean, even when this team was kind of struggling a little bit at the beginning of the year, I look back to that game in Winnipeg where he just brought the blender out, and it seemed to have ignited a little bit into this lineup. I mean, we now all of a sudden have this real strong second or third line, whatever you want to call it, with Fiala, Deneau, and Laferriere, who've been playing really well. He made the decision to get Gavrikov on the top pair with Mikey Anderson. That's paid a lot of dividends to the point where now you have people wondering like where they're going to play Drew Doughty because that pair's been playing so well. And then you look at the play of Jacob Mavrara. He's been it felt like forever since we'd seen, or if I guess we haven't seen Mavrara get a consistent playing time, and he's been willing to do it, and it's paid off with him elevating the play of Jordan Spence too. So yeah, Jim Hiller's been pushing all the right buttons, and I put him right up there with Carberry in terms of the top two coaches for the Jack Adams so far.
Yeah, I think he's got to be in the conversation. I think with Carberry, who's right there as well. I think when you look at, people may not give the credit, but when you look at New Jersey's season last year, and Sheldon Keefe's got that team, they're just a couple points off the President's Trophy as well. Then you're going to have conversations for if Calgary gets to playoffs. I think there's going to be shouts for Ryan Husker, rightfully so. Similar with Utah, with Andre Tourigny, if Utah ends up making a little bit of run and making playoffs. But I think as of today, yeah, Jim Hiller's got to be in that conversation. He sure has held on a hell of a lot better with this roster than I thought, and I think many others too. There's no question about it. Now the teams, what are we at? 32 games in the season. I want to ask you something, Russ, because I think I tweeted something like this out last week. So the Kings in their last 10 are 8-1-1. Okay. Despite an 8-1-1 stretch in their last 10 games, they're a bad week from being out of the playoffs. Like if you look at how tight it is, they're only 2 points up on Edmonton, despite winning 8 of 10. Because guess what? Edmonton has also won 8 of 10.
And I hate it so much.
Despite Vancouver's struggles of late, they're 4-3-3. They're only 4 points back of LA. So it's like LA has had to play this good just to keep pace. That's how good this Pacific Division has played and the Western Conference has played, which, it's hard because like you're so excited as a Kings fan, man, look at this, they're on such a run. And then you look at the standings, like we got no separation here still. It's kind of crazy when you look at the standings, Russ. They just haven't been able to actually get much separation.
Yeah, I haven't really been paying attention to the standings, I feel like, during this stretch, because you just kind of assume. I think we talked about this last time I was on. Like the regular season almost feels like kind of like a chore right now to kind of get through because we've been so focused on what this team's going to do in the playoffs. So like even with this stretch, like you just kind of assume like the Kings are on a heater, they're winning all these games. They're one of the hottest teams in the NHL. And then I looked at the standings today, and you see the second and third hottest teams are Vegas and Edmonton. It's like, oh, God, come on. Like, can we have a little bit of a break here where you guys can just go on a little bit of a, I don't know, it sucks, really, because
like, God forbid the Kings go, because listen, every team goes through stretches where they could have a one win in 6 game stretch or whatever it is, right? That stuff like that happens. And when you look, like Calgary is the team that's just out of the wild card. They're 1 point out of the wild card, and they're 5 points back of LA right now. And conceivably, like if they go on a stretch where they win, 4 out of 5, all of a sudden this just gets even tighter. It's just crazy how this great run of hockey, and they haven't been able to gain separation. Obviously, it's not their fault; they're doing their job. But it's it's impressive how tight this Pacific Division is, and it appears to be a really strong division right now. I think it's had its ups and downs over the last few years, but right now they're going. Vegas looks great, LA looks great, Edmonton looks great. So the division's in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I think the really only thing, I think Kings fans are kind of traumatized, or at least I am, by what happened last year, and just kind of hoping like, okay, let's just keep it going. I don't even want to I get reluctant to even talk about it because it's like I think it was someone mentioned in the chat earlier. I think it was Robert. He says, I don't know, guys. I'm not going to get too high on this. We've seen similar runs in the past. and the offense still needs major work. Which, yeah, the offense has kind of had its struggles a little bit, especially the power play, where we can talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, it's like we've seen this team go on this run last year where they were top in the NHL and all these metrics and whatnot, and on the standings, and had that record long win streak on the road to start the season, and then they had all those troubles in January. But to be honest with you, like for me, like when I watch this team play, like I have like there's nothing that worries me in terms of like that might happen again. Like I see a lot of buy-in. The thing that what's impressed me the most about Jim Hiller and what he's been able to get from these players is the buy-in to the system. And we didn't see that at all really in the first part of the season. It felt like up until the San Jose game, and then after the San Jose game, and then since then it's like this team is like now all of a sudden found this like confidence where it's like, okay, like if we play this game that Hiller probably wants them to play, this like Jacques Lemaire type of game that we've talked about, like they'll win games, and the offense is starting to click a little bit too. So yeah, like and with what's so impressive too is they're doing it with all these young guys that we've talked about at the beginning of the year that we felt had to carry this team to take that next step, and they're getting that production from those young players. Alex Laferriere has been amazing throughout the entire year. Alex Turcotte has been amazing throughout the entire year. And Brant Clark's had his stretches, and even if he slowed down a little bit of late on, at least production wise, he's still playing real solid defensive in his defensive zone. And this is even with Quentin Byfield, who's kind of been up and down throughout the entire year, and he's maybe more down than most. And if he gets it going, like this team can really go on a heater here and maybe even win the division, which I think that's something they need to strive for, to be honest with you. I'm done with this like 2-3 thing. Like I just can see it. Like it's going to be Edmonton. Like if you get 2 or 3, it's going to be Edmonton. So I don't know. Like I think I could see it being the Kings in Vegas going for that first spot. Who knows? It could be Edmonton. But for some reason, just always, if you're in that second or third spot, you're going to end up facing Edmonton, at least from the last few years, what we've seen. So yeah, like if I'm the Kings, just keep the pedal to the metal, keep racking up as many points as you can. And who knows, maybe they can take the Pacific Division title at the end.
I don't think they're going to have a stretch like last year, because I think that was a fluke. I just think I don't think that they were as good maybe as they started the season. I mean, listen, we said all this same stuff in last November, early December about they were cup contenders. They were getting buy-in. They were doing the system. Even England was playing well. Like we were, you name it, we were, and it was all true at the time. And I don't think that they were as bad as the horrible January, record wise.
A lot of overtime losses.
But they lost a lot. Yeah. They went a lot of games without a win. I don't think we're going to see a stretch like that. I do think you're going to see, they're not going to win on 8 out of every 10 games, right? You're going to see this kind of settle a little bit. But I don't think that we'll see a stretch like that. I just think it was largely unlucky. They weren't getting any saves. Their shooting percentage went even more into the tank than it usually is. So I'm honestly not worried about a crazy bad stretch like that. I mean, the only, it's not even a worry thing, is just how the fact that there was no separation despite this great stretch. And that's just a credit to the teams in the division. That's a credit to Edmonton, who obviously is playing great hockey right now. And Vancouver, if now that they've got a little health, if they can steady their ship a little bit, they've got a pretty aggressive GM. So we'll see what they decide to do. Because, then all of a sudden you got yourself a battle again. But again, I'm not worried about it, and I'm not worried about playoffs right now. I feel very good about them getting in, just a matter of where they slot. But for those that are worried, like Robert, I totally get it about another January slump. I'm honestly not worried about that. I think it was a little fluky. So
yeah, just to kind of piggyback off that, when comparing some of the stats, it's funny because you compare some of the stats and the on-ice metrics at 5-on-5 compared to this team last year. The shot share is pretty much the same. Corsi share is pretty much the same. The expected goal share is actually a little bit higher this year than it was last year. And their defensive metrics, and I think a lot of it's contributed to their real strong defensive metric play, because the expected goal for per 60 is actually pretty similar. So it's been defensively, that's what they're their strong suit has been. And this is also a team without Drew Doughty too. So I
Yep.
think once Drew comes back, I'm not concerned with him having a negative impact on this team's play. If anything, it's only going to heighten it and make this team better. Like I've had people ask me like, hey, where do you slot Drew in? Because Gavrikov's playing so well on the right side. I mean, you have to go back to Anderson Doughty. You go back to Gavrikov Spence, in my opinion, even with how well Morvarara has been playing. Hats off to Morvarara, but I think he's the perfect 6'7" defenseman. I've never really seen him as more than that, but I've always wanted him to play over certain players
Agreed.
that were in the lineup. But hey, if the Kings need a defenseman to come in, he's the first guy I'd be calling, and I think he's been doing a great job since then.
Yep, agreed completely.
Yeah, so let's dive, Joe. Before we get into some more Kings talk, because I want to get into we'll get into some other topics. I want to talk about a possible Gavrikov extension, because I've had a lot of people ask me about that. Where they'll slot in Trevor Moore. I see some questions about Arthur Kaliev, so we'll get to all that. But first, I want to talk about a little bit of coast to coast, some around the NHL action.
I like it.
Because there's been a lot going on in the NHL. I think I was listening to a PDO cast, the PDO cast with Dmitry Filipovich and Thomas Dranch had a real good conversation about how there's been so much like drama around the NHL. There's been a lot of teams on tilt, I think is what he said. And it seems like a lot of that's happening in your good old state of New York there, Joe.
Oh,
For some reason, the Buffalo Sabres and the New York Rangers just can't stop beating themselves up. The Rangers, I feel like, are a little bit more, I guess, conflicted in their situation, because they maybe had a little higher expectations than I would say the Sabres. So, yeah, the Rangers have gone ahead and made a couple big moves. I'm not sure if we talked about the Trouba move, but that Trouba move, maybe we did.
Last week, Brandon and I did. Brandon and I talked about it last week.
Yeah, you guys touched on the Trouba move. Go back and take a listen to that. But they made another move in trading Cabo Kako for who was the second overall pick in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, 2021 draft. I think that's right.
That's right.
No, 2019. 2019, sorry. 2019 draft, he was the second overall pick. Because he was, I'm going to look that up.
Turcotte draft, right?
Yeah, because he was taken after Hughes.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, 2019. Second overall pick in 2019. And he was traded to Seattle Kraken for Will Borgen, who's kind of a shutdown Trouba type of defenseman who's a pending UFA, a third-round pick, and a sixth-round pick for a second overall pick. Joe, I got to be honest with you. When I first saw this trade go down, I was quite surprised that this was the only return that they can get for Kako. And, oh, man, I just foresee a lot more trouble in Rangerland going forward. What do you think about this squad here?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, I don't think the Rangers have been that great of a team. I think this has been a team that coming into this year, you look in the past couple of years, their 5-on-5 metrics have been okay, like average, sometimes below average. They rode an elite power play and elite goaltending. Not totally kind of look at Winnipeg this year, similar. They're riding a great power play, great goaltending. 5-on-5 metrics are only so-so. So if you don't get a great power play, which the Rangers aren't getting this year, if you don't get great goaltending, which I don't say that Shesterkin's not been great, I think the environment in front of him just stinks, then all of a sudden you look a lot more human. And it is surprising that that's the only return that they could get for Kako. That said, if you were going to get much more than that, I mean, you're probably just going off of his prospect value at that point, or, his draft value, because he hasn't found his game consistently enough in the NHL. And it's probably tough because he's thrown into a spot in New York where, they're a contending team. It's not as if they have a whole lot of time. They're not like Chicago and San Jose where they can let these kids just kind of play and figure their stuff out. Like, they can't give him at times the ice time. And hey, it took Lafreniere a couple of years too to really find his game and become an impact player in New York. So as far as the return, it's obviously low. It's obviously sunk cost at this point. That they didn't get anything what they were going to get out of Kakko, which is disappointing in that sense. I tend to think Borgen is a fine player. Like he's a bottom pair defenseman, nothing to write home about. But I think it's getting, I don't know, I think it gets a little glossed over sometimes when this trade gets talked about, because I don't think he's nothing, right? Obviously, it's still a far cry from what you would have expected out of Kakko. But I think Borgen can maybe help that blue line a little bit. That they did lose Trouba. Now, obviously, he's not going to replace Trouba in terms of minutes. But I think he's a capable NHL defenseman, and then they get a couple picks. So listen, I just don't think the Rangers are that good. I do think Chris Drury is going to be really aggressive. I don't think we're done. I think I can see the Rangers being aggressive here. That said, what are they looking at the standings now? They're 5 points back of the second wild card, which is Ottawa, and there's two teams between them. Pittsburgh and Philly are both ahead of the Rangers right now, and their Rangers are tied with Columbus and the Islanders. Now, the Rangers have a couple games in hand, but it's still early for that. So I don't know. I just don't think this team's that good. We may see Drury get aggressive, but none of this matters, Russ, when you're getting the play from Mika Zibanejad or lack thereof that you're getting. They need him to be a stud, and he's just not. That's a big problem.
He's their PLD from the Kings because he's getting paid the same.
He was so good though.
Yeah.
But
I have to look at his 5v5 numbers because it seems like some of the Rangers
I'm gonna hop in and interrupt you because you're right. So the 5-on-5 piece, this has been coming for the last year, maybe 2 seasons, where his 5-on-5 numbers have always been kind of there's not really a whole lot there, but he's producing on the power play, so we'll just look past it. Well, now he's not producing at all, and now it's become a real problem for a guy that's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years left after this at 8.5 per. You hope he didn't just hit a Jonathan Huberdeau wall and fall off a cliff at 31 years old, but this doesn't look good for Mika Zibanejad, and that's impossible to recover from. Your 1C who's getting paid, a decent chunk to just totally fall off the map. I don't know how you recover from that.
Yeah. I was looking at their salary cap, and it is not pretty. And it's almost like they were kind of in a pickle a little bit too with the Shesterkin thing, because talk about it all the time. It's like you never pay your goalies, but when you get to this point when you have an elite goalie, and he's been playing so well for you, and he's almost carried, like you said, he's pretty much carried them at certain points. But now all of a sudden you get to a point where your team in front of him is just playing so bad where you can't even do that. So you're stuck with this goalie who can't really win games or steal games for them, who's getting paid $11.5 million starting next year.
Mm-hmm.
And you have an $8.5 million per year tied up in a centerman who's not producing like a centerman. Or a top 6 centerman. You have Chris Kreider, who's 33 years old with 2 years left at $6.5 million, and you have Artemi Panarin, who's 33, who's got 1 more year left at 11.6.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny because I saw a little bit of this talk on Twitter. It's like, who would you rather be a fan of right now? Would you rather be a fan of the Rangers, or would you rather be a fan of the Buffalo Sabres? And I almost lean to the Sabres because even with all the troubles that they've gone through in the past, at least they're a young team. At least they have at least some kind of growth maybe to look forward to. I don't know. What do you think about that one?
No, I'm going to say Rangers because you know what? The reason I say that, in theory, that's right. It would be Buffalo. But they've been rebuilding for like a decade and a half at this point. They've gone through multiple iterations of this rebuild. And the Rangers, at least, I trust the organization more to creatively find a way out of it. The Trouba deal, I think, was really good. Because, and I think it was good in a hockey sense, in an on ice sense. Now, like whatever is going on in the room, if it had negative effects that way, I don't know. I won't speak to that. I can't speculate there. But from a hockey sense, it made a lot of sense. And it opens up space. I think they're going to find ways to get creative. I think they're willing to be aggressive. This and people want to go there. Like this is a team that they sent a letter, if you remember, Russ, a few years back.
I do remember that.
About
Yeah.
we're gonna rebuild, and then all of a sudden Artemi Panarin wants to go to the Rangers, and that changes everything, right? The Rangers have that draw. People want to go there. So if there's a trade, if there's a free agent, they're going to be in it and they're going to be aggressive. And I trust them to work their way out of it much more than I trust what's going on in Buffalo, which is a disaster right now, Russ. I mean, you had the Kevin Adams press conference with the palm trees, and what's really alarming to me is you have Terry Pagula, the owner, going in and having a conversation with the team. The next day, they get throttled in Montreal by the Canadiens. Like, it's not as if the owner comes in, they put a solid week together, and then have a blow-up game. Okay, that happens. It was the next damn night that they got embarrassed by Montreal. It's like, this is bad. And I think, I think Pagula, Robert Barton puts it here in the chat. I agree with this. I think this is a thing. I think the Pagulas have an internal cap. You look at the recent history of the Buffalo Sabres, they don't spend to the cap. And I don't know what team that pretends to say you're going to make playoffs doesn't spend to the cap. And they entered this season a solid player short of a salary cap, and you just don't do that. So I don't think they're as it's hard to believe the Pagulas are all that serious about this team making playoffs if they're not presumably giving their GMs, because Adams isn't the first GM to not spend to the salary cap in Buffalo. And I don't know. I don't know what you do, because I think going back to the question that you asked, like Kevin Adams didn't do a job this offseason. Now, whether that's his hands tied a little bit by Pagulas, or he makes the excuse about the palm trees and players not wanting to go there or waive their no trade clause, but he was a GM that had and he got some praise because he filled out the bottom six. That's lovely. Yeah. Your team needed a top six scoring winger big time. They failed to get that. They needed an impact piece because, it's just it's a tall ask to have everything land on Tage Thompson. And they didn't get it. And they filled out the bottom of the roster, and it's fine. But even that said, it's really surprising to see how bad this team is this year. I would have never thought, with the defense group that they've got, there's enough talent and enough, they did add depth to the roster, that this team shouldn't be where it is right now. And I don't know. Like, I don't think it's Lindy Ruff. I think Lindy Ruff's a good coach. I have no idea. That's the most disheartening thing right now, is there's no, this was supposed to be the year where they took a next step. And
it's always supposed to be the year.
True.
Yeah, I'm looking at their salary cap right now, and they have almost 10 million in cap space right now. Yeah. And I think a lot of it was I liked some of the moves that they made, like the McLeod move. I actually really liked, because that was
they did make some. Yeah,
he's a bottom six player, but he was pretty solid when we saw him in Edmonton the last few years, and I think that's a player that maybe Edmonton is missing a little bit in their bottom six. But I think a lot of it, like you said, they need a legitimate top line scoring winger, and maybe they were reliant a little too much on their younger talent to kind of provide that. Peterka has been kind of struggling a little bit. I believe he has 8 goals. Yuri Kulik he's a great player, but he's only 20 years old. Peyton Krebs hasn't really taken that next step for them. So, I mean, this was a team that was kind of screaming for a player like a Jake Gensel would have been perfect for them. I mean, you tie him to a player like Cousins or whatever, it would have been great.
Yeah. Or there was a lot of rumors about Martin Necas and the Buffalo Sabres. And so, because the other thing is this, if a free agent won't go to Buffalo because it's Buffalo, okay, then you have to do it via trade. I mean, for a long time there, Russ, the Kings weren't able to sign a lot of free agents. Right. Mm-hmm. That's pretty nice weather environment out there. So I think it's a pretty lame excuse from Kevin Adams. If you win, players will start to go there. So this is my whole thing with this team and looking at it and looking at these prospects here in Rochester is like, they can't all make it, right? This was the off season where you have to find a package, whether you mentioned Kulik, you mentioned Zach Rosen, Jack Quinn, Peyton Krebs.
Some great young talent there. I mean, so
right.
good.
Ryan Johnson is a defenseman still in Rochester here. So there's so much young talent. Like, you've got to find a way to package that talent and go get yourself an impact player. And they either couldn't do it or didn't do it or whatever you want to say, but it didn't happen. And to me, that's a big miss. And I don't know what you're waiting for, because that you can't, all those guys can't make it. Like, you could trade 2 or 3 of those guys and you still have a few guys. We didn't even mention Zach Benson's name, right? Like, you still have guys that are young and potentially impactful players that you could still have and go make a deal, and they didn't make the deal. Adams did allude to, he didn't say Natchez, he didn't say it, but he alluded to a trade that it sounded like he had in place that he thought may have been an overpay, that I think, if I understood correctly, he kind of hinted that the player wouldn't come here. Now, and everybody's like, well, that must be Martin Natchez. Now, Elliot Friedman reported shortly thereafter on 32 Thoughts that Martin Natchez, in his understanding, was he would stay. He was welcoming a trade. Now, it wasn't a guarantee that he would then sign like an 8-year deal, right? He might sign like a bridge deal to get to him to UFA. And so, if that's true, that's a huge miss by Buffalo. Again, you take that swing. It's been 12 years that you've made playoffs. If that deal was a thing, if that deal was something that was in place, then that's on Kevin Adams. But there's so many problems in that situation. I don't know what they do next.
Man, yeah, you just feel that team makes me sad. they just do. And the whole palm tree things, that's such a terrible excuse. Like,
didn't go over well, Russ.
It's awful. Here. No, yeah, like, I saw a clip of a Sabres fan podcast, kind of similar to ours, and he was just going off, and I was like, "Feel you, bud. I'm there for you, man." like I don't like. He was talking about like rip the letters off their chest. I don't know if you saw it, but yeah, like,
I did not.
Like, when you have your GM or owner coming out and saying stuff like that, like, no, that's your job as a GM is to come up with creative ways to make your team better. That's all you're supposed to do. And the coach is supposed to get that out of your players. Like, as much as Ranger fans want to get the pitchforks and torches out for Chris Drury, he's doing what he can to kind of get this team better. I mean, he got Jacob Trouba off them for nothing. He got Barclay Goodrow's contract off of the books for nothing. I mean, he traded Capo Caco. Maybe he didn't get a good return for it, but I mean, we don't know the ins and outs of that locker room. So who knows what's going to happen. But like, I was kind of with you with the Rangers the last few years. Like, every time I feel like when they were in the playoffs and we do our playoff picks, like, the Rangers, I just kind of like gloss over the Rangers and be like, I don't know. I don't see them winning anything. And then it's like, they made it. It's so weird. They made it at the conference final last year. And I think a lot of people forget that. I mean, I forget that they were even there. And then it was just kind of the Panthers were just unbeatable, I guess. But yeah, like, both of those teams, I mean, and the Preds are right there too. Like, the Preds are an absolute dumpster fire. So I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow. But yeah, the Rangers and the Sabres, man, both those, some hard times in New York. And one more thing about the Kako thing, it's kind of funny how, like, prospects like development, like, and the fans kind of appreciation, or I guess recognition of where their prospects are at in their development is so different, like, with each player. Like, Capo Caco and Alex Turcotte were drafted in the same draft. Caco, I believe, has 14 points in 31 games. Alex Turcotte has 13 points in 27 games. And the recognition from the fan base couldn't be any more different from the two players. Like, Kings fans, we're so stoked for everything Alex. And I know Turcotte's doing way more than probably what away from the play in terms of production, like all that stuff. He's been great all over the ice, elevating his line mates. But it's so funny because they're drafted in the same draft, and we've been so high and Turcotte's play and everything. And then it seems like everybody's been so low on Kakko, and it's just like, man, they were drafted 3 spots away from each other. Like we're talking about like in the same draft. So it's just kind of funny. And I want the Alex Turcotte strong play to give a lot of reminder to people about to still, as much as we're critical, and I'm probably critical, we're all critical of Quentin Byfield's play. We still got to be patient with him because he's a centerman. He's now playing the center role. And I think he's been playing better of late. So hopefully we see that kind of continue. He got an empty net goal last night, so maybe that gives him a little bit of confidence. But yeah, I mean, for all the hype that we're giving Alex Turcotte, he's 2019 draft. Quentin Byfield was 2020. He's still developing. Maybe if we can get Quentin Byfield to turn into the type of player that we eventually see him to be, that would be great for LA. And then you can have Byfield and Turcotte, these kind of players, developing into great players. And I know Kakko has played a ton of games. I see that, Al Smith, but it's kind of funny to see that kind of development. So yeah, that's it's fun times for Sabres and Rangers fans, I'm sure.
I still say, and just one last thing on the Sabres, I said this last year, and again, this may be Kevin Adams unwilling to. He made the trade last year, Middlestat for Bo Byram, which was, that was a solid trade, I think. I think Byram's really good. But what it did was it added another left shot D, right? You've got Dahlin, Power, Samuelson, Byram, and Ryan Johnson, who could probably play in the league right now. He could probably be an NHL defenseman who's been in Rochester all season. And it's like, I'd be hard pressed to think that there's not a team out there that couldn't use one of those. Obviously not trading Dahlin. I'd be shocked if they traded Power, but you couldn't tell me that there's not a team in this league that doesn't want one of those young left shot defensemen that you couldn't find a match for, and maybe even paired with another prospect. But Kevin Adams is yet to pull the trigger.
Yeah. What do you think about Dahlin?
I think he's a stud.
You think so?
Yep. I think he's great. I think. So I go back a couple years back, Tony Granato. I don't know if it was Tony Granato's first time when he took over. This team was arguably the most fun team in the league to watch. They were playing basically positionless hockey. It was free flowing. It was easy on the eyes. Sure that they needed to tweak some things to really kind of, but they were still so young and in this rebuild process. But it really just brought so much out of Rasmus Dahlin. You look how good he is. And then as they've kind of gone these next couple of years after that, I think he's been fine. I think Dahlin's really, really good. But the team they're not playing the same kind of. It's almost as if they got too scared of how offensive they were and then reined it in a little too much and focused a little too much on the D, and it's just not worked. Now, I don't know. That may be a little unfair of me to say, but I think Dahlin's a stud. I think he's easily a top 10 defenseman in the league, and I could probably consider higher as well. I think he's excellent. And he's hurt. He's been hurt. He should be back. I don't know if he's playing tonight. There was rumors.
No, he played tonight. Dahlin.
He did.
Yeah.
Okay. This was his first game back, I think, in a while. He missed a bunch of time, which hasn't helped. I mean, so I think he's great. Yeah, I think he's great.
I'm waiting to see him like take that next step because I know he's got the skill, he's got the talent. Every time I watch him play, you just know when he's got the puck on a stick, something's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I just I wanted to see a little bit more dog in him. Like I need to see like a winning attitude out of Dahlin because I know he had that dust up with Krebs in practice, and you could be good or could be bad. You never know, but that happens in practices all over the time. We even saw it with the Kings with Warren Fogle and Tanner Jeannot get into it, and look at them now. So it's like I just want to see a little bit more out of Dahlin. He's getting paid $11 million a year, so
it was the year before last. He had over 70 points.
Yeah,
I mean, it's he can go, and I think obviously the environment right now isn't great there. He was just named captain before this season, so I'm with you. I think Dahlin, they need him to be the best player, and as he gets back here and healthy, hopefully he does. But I'm a huge Rasmus Dahlin fan. Yeah.
Yeah. John JM22 says Dahlin is going to turn into Hedman as soon as he gets out of Buffalo. Oh man, that would be another one that leaves Buffalo.
That would be, yeah. Seriously. Well, Russ, we may be wrapping up coast to coast here, but I wanted to get in with another one of our sponsors, and that is DraftKings. It is it's NBA season, and watching our favorite NBA players is the gift that keeps on giving. And Pick 6 from DraftKings, an official partner of the NBA, is a way to take a shot at even more cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Speaking of gifts, new Pick 6 customers play $5 and get $50 back in Pick 6 credits. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play. $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Happy holidays from DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
We were talking about the Rangers, and I think as we were talking about them, Matt Rempe got a 5-minute major and a game misconduct for an elbow to the head of Miro Heiskanen and knocked Heiskanen out of the game. Dude, I just saw the replay. Like,
why do they bother with this guy?
Yeah, why do they play him? Like, what are they getting out of him that I don't know. That's like he's a forward, you can hide him a little bit more, but even then,
Right.
like that's like 4 minutes of just unnecessary ice time you're giving to a guy that does crap like that. Like you're hurting other teams now, not even hurting yourself. Like, yeah, Heiskanen, that's another great player in the NHL. That's
yeah.
So the Rangers, the Sabres make me sad. The Rangers like piss me off. Like when I watch them play, like it's funny. But enough about other teams. Let's get back to the team that we love to talk about, the LA Kings, and a team that's playing really well. And a lot of the reason that they're playing so well is their defense is the best in the NHL. They currently boast the best expected goal metrics, expected goals against metrics, I guess, in the NHL. One of the best going back since they started tracking expected goals back in 2007, I believe, is when they started tracking. And one of the players that's helping out with all these defensive metrics is one Vladislav Gavrikov, who is a pending UFA after this season's over. He's being paid $5.875 million. This is the second year of that 2-year contract that he's signed. That kind of surprised us a little bit because it seemed like he wanted to bet on himself to cash in a little bit more once the salary cap goes up. And if I'm a gambling man, I think Gavrikov's done pretty well for himself here. It seems like he's going to get a hefty payday. And it's got to the point where it seems like the Kings maybe need to keep Gavrikov around just by how well he's been playing and all of his contributions. So now the question is how much are you willing to pay him if you're the Kings to keep him? Because if he's on the open market, he's going to get probably a pretty good deal. Joe, I'll give you the general manager duties. You're Rob Blake. How much are you willing to give Mr. Vladislav Gavrikov to keep him in LA, and how many, let's say how many years as well? Let's tie that to it.
Oh boy. And that's
on the spot.
Yeah, that's the big thing is the years. So he just turned 29 last month. So I get nervous about the years as much as anything. We're going to have the salary cap go up. He's probably going to get a raise on his 5.875, something like that, $5.875 million. So I think his play this year has certainly warranted. I think he's been excellent. There's no arguing how good he's been this year for the Kings, particularly defensively. So I would not want to go more than like 4 years, but I know that's not realistic. So like I'm probably not. I mean I may miss the boat here. If I was actually the Kings GM, I'd probably be offering a shorter term deal, probably be willing to go up in the salary, but it's probably a shorter term deal because I just don't know. My concern with this style of defenseman, so it's kind of twofold. And anybody that's listening to this show knows kind of how I like, kind of prefer my defenseman to play. Gavrikov doesn't quite fit that, but he's so good defensively. He's been great this season. But it's to me, like I worry that this type of defensive defenseman, I don't know how well it ages, I guess is where I'm going. Now maybe he's going to be fine as he gets older and he's perfectly fine. I just don't know. And that makes me nervous. And so I'm really hesitant to go much beyond 3-4 years for Gavrikov. I don't want to be paying him into his mid-30s, just in case we start to see that fall off. And I worry that you're going to see he could probably get 7-year deal, and he'll get a 7-year deal he can get a 7-year deal in the open market, probably $7 million, 7 by 7. And I wouldn't be surprised the year he's having.
That's what Shea got with Nashville, and he was putting up a lot of points too.
Okay, so maybe it's a little less.
Yeah, because that was the one guy I looked at in terms of like defensemen who have signed maybe deals around this type. I don't know how old Shea is. I think they might be kind of similar age. Let me check that. Brady Shea, how old are you? He's 30. So yeah,
okay,
around the same age, and he got paid 7 by 7 with Nashville, and he was a point producer in Carolina.
Well, what was the deal? Although it's, again, not exactly the same player type. What was Noah Hannafin in Vegas? 7.35. He's a little younger though. So so I don't know. Do you think it's so it's not the same. So okay, so maybe it's more like a but he made almost $6 million this year.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So this is where
I forget which GM I was listening to. They kind of talked about it, and I have to remind myself every time we talk about contracts or whatnot. He said, like, you can never isolate years and cap hit. They're always tied together. So it's always like, if you want to go short term, the cap hit's probably going to go higher. If you want to go long term, you can lower it a little bit. So yeah, it's always tied together. So that's what I always think about when I hear this, and like, or when we talk about these. So like, if you Kings do want to go shorter, like I could see it. Like maybe I'd be willing to pay him like $7 million for 2-3 years, maybe. But like, I think, like you said, he's probably going to be looking for like a 5-year deal. Like this is why
this is a big this is
why he signed that short-term deal, because he wanted to bet on himself to get a max extension somewhere, whether it be LA or wherever. But I think it's got to the point you kind of look maybe at like a lot of the Kings prospect and development and what they have up and coming. There's really nobody on the left side. You have Jacob Dvorak, who's maybe the other guy in the
right side
line there. And I don't know what's going on there. I'm excited to watch him at the World Juniors, so that'll be fun. Angus Booth has been playing pretty good, but he's still young.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like there's no one else. So like, if I'm the Kings, like, and if I'm even Gavrikov, I'm thinking like, oh, I might hold the Kings to the fire a little bit here and maybe try to squeeze all his money, because like he bet on himself, and it seemed it would be a pretty good bet. So now is this time to cash in. So for me, I think like I could go as high as like 5 years if that brings it closer to 6, maybe like a sub 6.5. Joe, I know I see you rubbing your head, and I know you're going to be like, I know you hate this, but like, with the salary cap going up, I think it's like maybe we can elevate these cap hits a little bit more.
Yep.
So for me, it's like 5 years at like 6.25, I'd be cool with. I'd be almost cool with. And a lot of it's because of how well he's been playing. I think he's been playing a lot better than what I expected when the Kings first traded for him from Columbus.
And he didn't have a great year last year. He was okay. He was fine last year. It wasn't bad, but he was fine. Like I always question, like, there's not a lot of production there, and I think your D better be elite if you're going to be making $6 million plus a year. And his D has been elite. Like, he's checked that box this year. That's for sure. I don't know. I just, like you said, I'm more willing to pay a little bit more for 3 years with the cap going up. It just makes me nervous going too deep into the guys' 30s. Like, I know they're different. But we just talked about Mika Zibanejad just completely falling off a cliff. He's 31 years old. I know it's a different player, different position, but like, this is not where I want to spend my money. It's not where I want to like plant my flag on guys that are approaching their 30s and into their mid 30s. It just, especially for a guy who he's one dimensional. Like, it's a great dimension. He's an elite defensive defenseman right now. But like, there's not any production to really come along with it to speak of. So I don't know. Like, I'm a little nervous about going too deep in the years. So I'm one of my favorite left shot defensemen, who it's bizarre to me that he's going to probably get less than Gavrikov, but Marcus Pettersson's a free agent, and I'm much more willing to give more years, and you could probably get him at lesser money, which is, again, crazy to me. But I don't know. There's going to be a lot of competition there. I don't. You're right. There's not a whole lot in the pipeline, so their hands may be a little bit forced here, I guess. Or you could just play the Moverari kid, who continues to play really well as your second pair left D. That may be a tall ask to play for him to be your consistent top four left shot defenseman, but that is something that's there. It's like you're paying a guy off of his career year, and I get it. He's earned it. And I think you got to know when to move on, I think. And I just torn because he's earned it. He's having a great year, but I don't like the years. I don't want the years.
Gavrikov is currently 12th among all NHL defensemen in expected goal share. He is, I think, where's he at? I'm a little bit lower. He's 18th in Corsi share. Yeah, I was just looking at this is Evolving Hockey. Jordan Spence is second in the NHL in expected goal share. I think a lot of that has to do with Jacob Moverara. Would you be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, among defensemen behind Luke Hughes.
Yeah. What's Moverari? What's Moverari? Is there we may have to tweak the minutes, but
yeah, I do have to tweak the minutes.
He's got to be up there.
Yeah, I think he's like number one, actually. If I go to, let's do 100 minutes. Yep, number one. You want to know too? Number one. So I think a lot of this has to do with zone start time, because I was looking at this, I think earlier today or yesterday, and Moverare and Spence are consistently starting their shifts in the offensive zone. They're the lowest among the LA pairs and defensive zone starts. So, I mean, that's always contributed to Anderson, Gavrikov, Edmondson, Clark, which is great. But I mean, yeah, like these are still some great numbers. And it's funny, second on the list is Mr. Kyle Burrows at 63%. Jordan Spence is fifth. So yeah, those bottom paired LA defensemen are getting some their analytic darlings thanks to where they're starting their shifts on the ice. So yeah, Gavrikov one will be interesting. Yeah, the Gavrikov one will be interesting.
So I see John Jamison in here that he's going to want Roy. Roy got 6 years at $5.75 million. That would basically be his same term or same money now for more years. I don't know. I think he gets paid more.
Do you think he gets more than that?
I think he's wanting to get into the sixes. I guess I don't know that. I have no idea if he actually wants that, but
that's a pretty good
he's making $5.75 this year. He's probably, is he not due a raise?
Well, I mean, 6
I think
years is a
that is,
lot.
yeah, I think yeah, yeah.
Like you're like
I mean, I
that's
don't want to
some
do 6 years, Russ.
no, I
It's
probably that might be
commitment.
a little yeah, that's a lot. Oh,
Takes him to
I don't know.
35.
Rob Blake's got
He
his
could
hands
be
tied here.
fine. He could be okay at 35, but the problem is he a top 4 D man at 35 still. Um, I don't know. This is a
If you
really
don't
tricky
sign
one.
him.
This is
Yeah, Rob Blake's got his hands tied with this one.
this is a tricky. This is probably trickier than Roy, because at least with Roy you could say, listen, we got Doughty, we got Spence, we got Clark coming.
Yeah.
Like, you can make that case to where it made sense to move on from Roy. Not to even say they moved on. They clearly were interested, I think, in bringing him back. But you can make that case. So it's harder to make with Gavrikov, because I mean they've just had an issue with left shot defensemen for a long time. I think in part because they for so long just have pigeonholed themselves into one style of left shot defenseman, and they refuse to consider otherwise. Like, you have to be of good size and defensive and long, and that, like, all else comes, whether you can move the puck, whether you can skate, comes secondary, and that just, I don't know, like, and in this system though, and with the way Kings play, with the way they play their structure, do you need to play Vladislav Gavrikov 5x7 or whatever the deal was going to be? I don't know. We've
funny,
been, I mean, now again, look at how well. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, the more we talk about it, like the more I'm talking myself out of paying him, because it's like I'm like thinking about it like in my head, and let's say you don't pay Gavrikov, right? Like Moverari, I believe he still has another year left on his deal.
Yep,
Edmondson has a couple years left on his deal. Mikey Anderson has a few years left on his deal. So it's like, could the Kings get would the Kings be okay with those 3 players as their left shot defensemen?
This was the whole conversation after the Edmondson signing. Is like, you didn't need to pay somebody to do what he's going to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing. Now, I know Gavrikov is obviously playing at a significantly higher level than Joel Edmondson is, but is the difference? Let's look at it this way, Russ. Is the difference between Gavrikov and, let's just for sake of argument say Moverari, is the difference what, $40 million over the course of a contract? Because what if whatever the deal is, I don't know. Like, is the difference between those two in the LA Kings structure that big to where it's that you need to sign a guy to that type of a contract? Now, I'm inclined to say no, but Moverari, to your point, has been a little like protected.
Yeah.
He hasn't had to play 20 minutes a night, so we don't know how that he would respond to that. Those are fair concerns, where Gavrikov is playing really, really well. So I get it, and to me that's the question. Now, again, I don't know. I know Pettersson's a free agent. I know, I saw someone mention in the chat, our old friend Jacob Chikrin's a free agent. Like, let's just pick those 2 guys. And I don't know the other free agents. I haven't looked that far ahead to know what the other left shot free agents are. But Russ, like, if you could get, and I bet you could get Chikrin and Pettersson at smaller contracts, like, wouldn't you just do that? You could probably, because I don't know what I don't know what Pettersson is in a tough situation in Pittsburgh. It seems to me that Gavrikov has way more respect in terms of his defensive play than even Pettersson and Chikrin do. So I can totally see Gavrikov getting more money than Chikrin and Pettersson.
Yeah,
and I think
I could too.
So if that's the case, I'm easily going with one of the other 2.
Yeah.
And it's not like those 2 are like small skill, not good defensively. Those are still big, long defenseman that could be well suited for LA.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I like I'd have to look at the full list of left shot D to see. And I don't want to play this game again, Russ, and look at all these left shot D and then they sign a guy like they signed. It's like it'd be a waste of my time to consider all of these good players and then they bring back Andreas Englund or something like that. So I don't know. I think it's a good conversation. I think it's a good question. I think Gavrikov has done an excellent job this year. He obviously timed it perfectly. He's playing great. He's going to earn a contract. I just get nervous that I'm the one to pay it.
Yeah. I think Rob Blake ends up backing up the Brinks truck for him, to be honest with you.
He's 100% staying in Los Angeles. No question about it. And
exactly.
I wouldn't be Russ, I'm telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 7x7.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised either. I think it's funny because we're talking about all this stuff that we want to see, but like if we get to the nuts and bolts of the whole thing of how the Kings like to build their team, like Gavrikov is like
exactly
the perfect defenseman for what LA wants. Like they already overpaid for Edmondson. Like if we go off of the precedent here, they're going to give Gavrikov money. So like
7x7.
We could talk about this till we could talk about this till it's blue in the face. And as much as we love Chikrin here, you love Pedersen, some other left shot defensemen that are out there. Gavrikov's going to get paid. He's good, and I think and that's the thing where I come here. Like we'll just finish the Gavrikov thing real quick, but that's where like I get to the point. It's like he does play so well, and he's such a great locker room presence. I feel like for this team, where there's some other like unmeasurables that are there for this type of player compared to some other unmeasurable type of players. So like that's where it's like, okay, like you can sell me on that because I've seen Gavrikov play so well, especially in LA system where they elevate players like Gavrikov, like you mentioned all the time. So like I'd be okay with it. It's just when we get to the point where it comes to the end of that contract, then we can have another discussion. But yeah, so like I wouldn't be surprised if Gavrikov comes in freaking tomorrow and we hear about some long-term extension after the break or whatever. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
Let's go to our next topic here. So one player that has been playing over these last few games is one Trevor Moore. He's been out day to day, I believe, with an upper body injury. I believe it's upper body. Could be wrong. But day to day. So he's not out too long. But he's been missing some time. And he was playing on the first line with Kopitar and Kempe. So in his stead has been one Alex Turcotte, who's been, like we talked about earlier, has been remarkable. He's been outstanding. It seems like everywhere he's played. And now it almost seems like they have a home now for Turcotte, at least I hope they have a home now for Turcotte with Kopitar and Kempe, because it seems like he's almost elevating the play of those two, which I didn't even think was possible with how well Kopitar and Kempe have been playing all year. But now that they have Turcotte, it just seems like he's been making plays every time he's on the ice. I think our buddy Randon shared a stat with us earlier today. I believe it was since December 1st. Every time when Turcotte is on the ice, whenever there's a goal, he's involved 100% of the time. So I believe it's called, I don't know what the statistics is called, but he's involved, whether it be scoring or assisting. When he's on the ice and a goal is scored, he's contributing. So you got to keep him there. But the question now comes is, what do you do with Trevor Moore? And especially with how well Fiala, Deneau, and Ferrier have been playing. Even Fogle, Byfield, and Jeannot have been playing pretty well, to the point where Hiller's been going with 11 and 7 and just kind of mixing and matching some forwards to play with Hellenius and Thomas on the fourth line. So now, yeah, it begs the question, Joe, what do you do with Trevor Moore when he comes back and he's healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I was liking a little bit of what I saw with Trevor Moore up with Kopitar and Kempe too. Obviously, I'm not touching Turcotte right now with that line. I kind of, for a bit, I wouldn't mind have seen Turcotte, because of how much of a playmaker he's been, and play with Fiala and Trevor Moore. Frankly, I think I would love to see that idea, but it's tough to move Turcotte right now from where he is. For me, I think Trevor Moore still very much has a role on this team. I think I put him in I mean, I think I would like to see more play with, again, with skilled players. I think the guy scored 30 goals last year. I think he's still a creative and an impactful player when it comes to the offense. I'd like to see him play with offensive players. So I'd kind of like to see him play with Fiala. He's played with Deneau quite a bit. That would push Laferriere down. And it's hard to I obviously that Byfield Fogel Jeannot line's playing really, really good right now. But I think Byfield, Fogel, and Laferriere could do just as well. So I'm not concerned about that, and slide Jeannot down to the fourth line. So I think my where I would slot more is either just a straight swap with Jeannot and move Jeannot down to the fourth line and put more with Byfield and Fogel, or I put more with Deneau and Fiala, Laferriere with Byfield and Fogel, and then move. Either way, I'm moving Jeannot down to the fourth line. So that's where I'm at. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, Fiala, Deneau, and Laferriere have been playing so well. Like, I feel like I've wanted to see Laferriere and Deneau play together. Going back to last year, I feel like they can kind of bounce off each other pretty well. They almost play a similar style of game where Deneau is maybe more of a two-way presence, not necessarily like a offensively skilled, I guess. Whereas maybe if Laferriere's got a little bit more talent on that end of the ice. But even then, they both are just real solid, good hockey players where they do everything so well. So I always felt like those two can kind of bounce off each other. And then when you add Fiala to the mix, who's that skill electric guy on the wing, kind of making things happen, I feel like that line has been just humming. And they're actually in terms of like minimum 100 minutes across the NHL, they're one of the top lines in expected goal share. So I think we talked about this a couple times, or at least maybe you had brought it up in terms of maybe wanting to see Trevor Moore play with Quentin Byfield a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about it a little bit earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So I would probably just go back to that. It just seems like even with how well I feel like Tanner Jeannot, I'm not going to blow it out of proportion and say he's been playing incredible, but he's been playing better.
Sure,
he's been
playing.
Yeah, he's been playing pretty good. So it's like you don't want to like take that away from how well he's been, kind of reduce his minutes a little bit. But I think if you get him down to playing with Hellenius, playing with Thomas on the fourth line, you can still get him like 9 or 10 minutes a night. Try to find some impact from him in that spot, and then with Moore, maybe you get a little bit more offensive production out of that line, even though they are producing a little bit with Fogel, who's been, Warren Fogel has been a revelation, man. Like he's been so good. I don't know if we praised him enough for how good that signing was in the offseason. He's just been, it seems like whenever the Kings need a big play or a penalty kill or a shot block or whatever, it's been Warren Fogel who's been out there for it. So I've been so impressed with him, and Byfield have been kind of bouncing back and forth. So now if you add Trevor Moore to that mix, who I don't want to say has been struggling to the season, but maybe he's kind of regressing to the mean of what Trevor Moore is as a hockey player now after last year. So now you kind of maybe get him back to maybe that Trevor Moore style of play with Quentin Byfield and Warren Fogel. I think now you're looking at a real solid top 9 for LA, who really you can throw out any line out there and get some production. But like I wanted to ask you, because like I've seen a lot of people mention or talk about it, like with how well the Kings have been playing without Trevor Moore, do we get to the point where you maybe even look to trade Trevor Moore in maybe in the offseason or even at the deadline or maybe during the season to maybe open up a spot for some of these other players? Because he's got 3 years left on his contract at $4.2 million per year. He doesn't have a no trade clause or anything, so he can be dealt to wherever the Kings want to deal him. Is that something you maybe visit in the offseason or sometime soon? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think I'm there for a couple reasons. One, I don't know. I mean, listen, the Turcotte has been playing great and he's producing now. Laferriere, after a little bit of he went a mini cold stretch, but he's back to being he's producing a bit. But I just think for a team that has been so goal starved, to trade away the guy that led your team in goals just the year before, man, I know it's been a bit of a slow start, but I like what he brings to the table. And I like the idea that he pushes guys in the lineup down a little bit. Like, again, it slots Jeannot into a probably more appropriate role, because then what happens if, because you're going to have Trevor Lewis come back, somebody is going to get hurt again. It's just the nature of hockey. And so all of a sudden, what are you trading more for, I guess, would be the question. And I don't, what do you think his value is to the league? I honestly don't know. Like, is he the centerpiece of a deal? Is there a hockey trade like we talked about with the Sabres? They traded Middlestat for Byram. Is there like that type of a hockey trade more for somebody? Like, I don't know what that trade is, because you mentioned the contract. It's not like I think it's perfectly reasonable. He's making 4.2 or whatever it is. So you've probably got to find somebody where money could work. What is the deal look like? I don't know. I mean, I think that gets a little tricky. If the Kings were playing chess, you could trade him to Buffalo, who could starving for a scorer, for Ryan Johnson. And then Ryan Johnson, there's your Gavrikov fill in for next year.
Rob Blake hates the type of player Ryan Johnson is, by the way.
But no, in all seriousness, I really don't know. I don't want to trade more. I generally don't know what his value is across the league. I don't know. And I don't know if you have, because he's not somebody that's talked about. Nobody really considers him, I don't think. Like, everybody was stunned that he scored 30. I mean, there's probably people that don't know he scored 30 last year, frankly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I don't even know what that trade looks like.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And what are you trying to fill? Because they're not going to go
exactly.
get a defenseman.
And that's the question mark. Like, what does this team need to maybe make themselves or elevate themselves to a cup contender? We talked about it. It's probably a legitimate scoring winger, like a upper echelon, like elite maybe scoring winger is what they're really kind of missing to put them in legitimate contender status. So it's like, you're going to trade Trevor Moore for who? Like who's out there that maybe you can possibly get? I'm sure there's deals to be made. But the thing with Moore is he does so much more than just even score.
Yeah.
And I looked specifically on the penalty kill. Like, he's one of the top units, or if not the first guy on the ice that steps in terms of forwards whenever the Kings are shorthanded. He actually leads the Kings in shorthanded time on ice percentage among all forwards. So, I mean, he's been the number one penalty killer for the Kings for the last probably couple of years. He did score 30, like you mentioned last year. That kind of gets overlooked a little bit, and maybe obviously probably not a consistent 30 goal scorer. But like, for me, it's like, if you're trading Trevor Moore, like, you got to make sure you get something better in return. This team, I mean, as much as we probably think they're in desperate need of maybe like a better left shot defenseman or maybe even a better goalie, like, they're not going to trade for one. They're not going to trade for somebody that's going to take away minutes from Gavrikov, Anderson, or Edmondson. They're not going to trade for someone who's going to take away minutes from Doughty, Clark, or Spence, even though Spence has maybe struggled and you can get a little bit more there. But even then, like, you're going to trade Trevor Moore for a third pair right shot defenseman who's going to play behind Drew Doughty and Brant Clark? Like, no. And then Darcy Kemper and David Rittich are goaltenders. So if you're trading a winger for maybe a better winger, you better make sure you get that production from that winger, because you're already getting pretty solid all-around production from Trevor Moore all around the ice, not just on the penalty kill, but you're getting some offensive production from him, whether it be even if it's not 20 goals or 30 goals, maybe it'd be 20, maybe even 15. Like, you're still getting some all-around good play from Trevor Moore, to the point where it's gonna come like the next few years where we might be talking about Trevor Moore being on kind of a discounted contract at only $4.2 million once this cap hit goes up a little bit.
He was last year. Yeah. And I think, listen, with the way Turcotte and Laferriere are going, it's kind of offset, and frankly, not to be outdone, Kopitar with over a point per game right now. Like, it's helped to offset, what's not there from Quentin Byfield, and maybe to a lesser extent Philippe Deneau, because they're not really getting the production from those guys. And we talked about before the season, like, we talked about the young guns a lot, but we said this team is going to go as Byfield goes. That hasn't been the case at all. And I think that's solely that's because of the other young guys in Laferriere and Turcotte. And so if you've got yourselves, and this is where I'm at personally, like trying to see, like, I'm trying to debate, like, what is this? How real is this? Like, man, if you're going to tell me that Turcotte and Laferriere are going to do this, you're going to get Trevor Moore back, Arthur Kaliev. I have not the slightest idea what role that kid's going to have. And then God forbid Quentin Byfield finds that production again. I mean, you might be talking about a team that call me crazy, just might be heading in the right direction in terms of like for real / dare I say contender. I don't know. I mean, because they're getting that production throughout the lineup, and I still think you need your stars, and the way Kopitar is playing at a higher level, producing at a higher level than I would have expected him to. So he kind of is your star right now, you could say. So I mean, so that's the thing. Like, if you deal more, I don't know what it is what hole you're filling. I mean, I think there's still a case to be made for a legitimate scoring winger. There's some people that would make the case that they need a second line center. I think, but again, I don't know that the Kings see that because they're getting elite defensive play from Danault and Byfield. The play is not bad, but they just got to just wait this out, right, and be a bit patient. So I don't know. I don't know that I see. I don't think they need to do a whole lot right now, pending any injuries, because I don't know what you do and who you're taking out of the lineup. I don't know.
Sai says, "You've activated my trap card," in quotations, saying that's from Rob Blake after Joe admits there is some progress from the team. Yeah, that surprised me too there, Sai. That surprised me too. It seems like we're kind of pessimistic on this team's production, or confident lack of confidence in this team at the beginning of the year, but they've changed our mind. I think a lot of it has to do with the young guns, is because, like, just kind of comparing back to last year, there were still a lot of question marks. I felt like all over the lineup. There were players that had been on this team for a few years already, so they were already kind of established NHLers that you knew what you were going to get out of them, and you already kind of felt you knew what their ceiling was. So you didn't really see a light at the end of the tunnel for these Kings teams the last few years, even when they got to Edmonton in the playoffs. But now it's like you see, like, okay, like there's a hill that this team is climbing. They're making that ascent with these players like Turcotte and Laferriere and Clark and even Byfield, who still hasn't gotten it going yet. But they're these young players that seem to all be taking their next step. And that's what gives me confidence that this team can be a better team, and maybe even a team that can win a playoff series when we get there. And I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but yeah, I think that's kind of where what we talked about earlier, where I don't really see this team going through. Because I'm going to knock on some wood here, but I don't see them going through a stretch that they went through last year of going winless and however many games that they went through in December and January. So yeah, I'm liking where this team's direction's at. I think Jim Miller is steering the ship in the right way, and I'm excited. And I think this Kings fan should be too. But before we go, I just want to we got to give a hat tip to Anze Kopitar.
Jeez,
he's on a career year at age 37. I mean, I feel like we don't talk about him enough. In Kings fans, we have to get the megaphones out to let the NHL world know just how well Anze Kopitar is playing right now. Because, like I said it last night, if the Hart Trophy wasn't so dependent on points and they kind of looked at everything that people do on the ice, like Anze Kopitar would be right at the top in terms of finalists for the Hart, because he is doing everything so well for this team. And it's just like hats off to him. Like I don't know when he's going to slow down. I hope it never happens. I'm getting to the point like, hey, does he want to stick around for another year after his contract is over too now? Because it's like, if you're going to keep playing at this level, why not give it another go? So, like, yeah, hats off to him.
It's almost like, everybody was talking about, it was clearly us included. We were, if not leading the charge of like, this is Quentin Byfield's like season. He's going to lead the team in scoring. Like, I was there. It's almost like Kopitar saw that, it isn't happening. It's like, oh, well, come on, let's get on the shoulders again. I'll bring us there. I'll bring us right back. It's just incredible. We're spoiled. We're you talk about, not to get into a whole other discussion, but you look at that era of players, that, Bergeron is retired, Jonathan Taves is retired. He's in a similar era, Sidney Crosby's at a different level, but he's still playing great. But like Kopitar is just still doing it. Like, and it's so ho-hum. It's so, it's just, it's incredible. I mean, you run out of words. I mean, we're just spoiled. The Kings and Kings fans have just been spoiled, and it kind of sucks. Like, it's gone by so fast. Like, you remember his first game, those cup seasons, the seasons where they were not yet making playoffs, but kind of trending in that right direction. And I'll fast forward, and it's been like, holy cow, we're almost at the end, and it's like, just enjoy it, because it's just so fun to watch. He's so good.
Man, yeah. I mean, the level of consistency he's been playing at his entire career, amazing. I mean, ever since that first goal that he scored in Anaheim against Chris Pronger, like, we knew something special was here, and he hasn't disappointed throughout his entire career. And yeah, like, once he's done, I mean, there's not enough accolades that the LA Kings can give, or Kings fans can, like, all the recognition that they could provide for what he's done for this franchise and the state of hockey in LA. It's just incredible. Yeah, and hat tip off to Adrian Kempe too, who's been having an incredible season too. Like, he's been on fire. I'm so looking forward to him playing in the Four Nations, just because I'm excited to see, like, him. This might be like his coming out party. Not that he really needs one, but for him to like take a national stage and be like, hey, like, I'm pretty good over here in LA. So I think that would be a place for him to make his presence felt. Well, Joe,
absolutely.
I think we made it through it without our boy Randon here. I appreciate everybody that hopped in the chat for us. You guys are awesome, like always. We'll have this out in podcast form tomorrow. The Kings have an early game tomorrow. I believe it's a 10:30 a.m. Pacific time start, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but they're in Nashville.
Is it really?
I think it's that early.
Yeah, it's 1:30 Eastern.
Yeah, 10:30 a.m. So be up and early. Kings fans are on the Pacific Coast, the East Coast guys. You be getting your lunches, get your sandwiches in, whatever. And then Sunday is a good one. You get our first look at PLD in a Capitals uniform against the Kings. Matt Roy's also over there.
Yep.
Alexei Protas. Oh, Chikrin too, but Alexei Protas, like, that kid's incredible. Like, 6'6", like, skates like the wind. Like, he's big. And, oh, man, he was a 2019 draft pick, I believe, as well. So that's a player to watch on the Capitals. They're humming along too. So that should be a good game. So tomorrow will be good. Looking forward to Sunday's game. But we're going to get out of here. Enjoy our weekend. You guys enjoy your weekends as well. And on this podcast, as always, go Kings go. See you guys.